With the best brand of football in Idaho, this is the 8-Man Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the Idaho 8-Man Prepcast. Brandon Baney joined by our 8-man expert, Will Hoenike. Will, thanks for joining us.
Expert might be a little bit steep, but I appreciate it. Good to be here.
Hey, I got to butter you up so you keep coming back each week. So
I guess so. It's the huge paycheck, right?
Right. Yes, for sure. The love of the game definitely is what fuels this Prepcast. And big thanks to everybody that tunes in, week out. There's a lot of different ways you can consume this podcast. You can listen to it at our site, IdahoSports.com. Across the top of the homepage, there's a bunch of different tabs. There's one that says Prepcasts. From there, there's a little drop-down menu. You can click on Idaho 8-Man Prepcast and listen to it there. You can download it on your favorite podcast platform, Google, Spotify, Apple, etc. And really, if you subscribe, then the app downloads it for you. That's one less thing you got to do. So you should definitely subscribe if you listen to it on a podcast platform. You can also tune in and watch every week on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel and Facebook page. And if you're watching on YouTube, just hit the little bell. There's a little bell icon on YouTube, and kind of like the podcast platforms, it'll automatically send you an alert when we've posted a new episode. So it's a really convenient way to stay in the loop. Let's get into it. To me, there was two really big stories in the 8-man game involving the top two teams in 1A D1 and 1A D2. I think we'll just go chronologically, and that is on Thursday night, Kendrick defeats Genesee 104-0. Will, you've been in Idaho a lot longer than I have. Have you ever seen a score that finishes in triple digits like that?
You know, there have been a couple. There was a game, Paul Kingsbury and I were talking about it. There was, and I think it was actually even a playoff game. I don't know, maybe 6-8 years ago. And I believe, and don't quote me on this because I didn't take time to research the specific game before we recorded this. I believe it was Valley and Lapway. And the final score was like 102-48 or something like that. But 102, wow. But 48 versus 0. And I've read a few things where people are pointing out. I was listening to a podcast done by the sports department up at the Lewiston Tribune where they were saying the 2-0. One of them was saying the 2-0 part is what stuck out to him. You know, you see every year, you see teams score 84, 88, 92. So you think about it, one more touchdown in that context is 100. So you've got teams that are sniffing that a lot. But doing that 2-0, that was pretty wild because and Genesee was playing without its best player. Angus Jordan did not play in that game. Head coach Justin Pedrovsky hoping to have him back here in a week or two and full go. And that changes the dynamic a little bit. But okay, so you put Angus Jordan back in. Maybe it's not 104-0. Maybe it's like 70-18 or something like that. But I think you and I would both agree 70-18 doesn't raise nearly as many eyebrows as 100-0. And, you know, I read a lot of comments from a lot of different directions that 104, what is Zane Hobart doing? He's running up the score, blah, 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 blah. And after talking to both coaches, I genuinely believe that was not Zane Hobart's intent. And I know that Pedrovsky and people around the Genesee program don't feel like that was his intent. And that's just sometimes games get away from you a little bit. And I think for Genesee being shorthanded, and the game just kind of got away from a little bit, coupled with the fact that Kendrick is really dang good. Pedrovsky even joked that their JV is probably better than a lot of varsity teams right now. You know, I think there are a multitude of factors at play. And, yeah, the score was ugly from a competitive standpoint if you're a purist. But I genuinely don't believe there was any ill intent. I don't believe it was anything dirty or malicious. I think it was just a game that just kind of got away.
Yeah, and that happens where, you know, it's not like Kendrick is keeping their starting unit out there. And, once the lead is built up, Coach Hobart pulls those guys. And
it was early second quarter when he started substituting, and both he and Pedrovsky said it was very obvious that the playbook had been limited to just one or two plays. But at some point, you got to let the kids play. And if you're a third string freshman and you're in a varsity game for the first time, I think it's pretty hard to ask that kid when the field opens up to have the state of mind and the awareness in the moment to, not go for the end zone. I don't know that you can tell them that. And Pedrovsky said, look, part of this is on us. We didn't play very well. We didn't tackle very well. But he was also extremely complimentary that his kids, they wouldn't quit. Like, they would have been mad if they would have stopped the game in the third quarter or something like that. Those Genesee kids, it's akin to the show. If you ever watch the show Friday Night Lights, there's a game in the fourth season, I don't know, where the coach just sees his team getting their butts handed to him. So he goes out at halftime and says, we can't do this. We're done. And the kids in the show were devastated. And they're like, Coach, you got to let us finish the fight. And Genesee, no matter how bad it looks on paper, Genesee finished the fight. And I know that Coach Pedrovsky was pretty proud of that.
Yeah, it was a good, there's no moral victories you can take away from that. But for Genesee, I agree. It was great to see them continue that fight. And it's a good reminder, Will, you talk about this all the time. In 8-man football, you are an injury away from penthouse to the poorhouse. And that's what we're seeing with Genesee right now. Hopefully Angus Jordan can come back. Okay, I was going to talk Raft River Oakley next, but this conversation about sportsmanship and, what do you do when you're, overmatching an opponent, it kind of leads into another game I saw this weekend where Lewis County was playing Meadows Valley. And again, this is a Meadows Valley team that's still kind of getting their feet under them. First full year as a varsity competitor in the 8-man game. And head coach Monty Madrell, I thought in a really good nod to sportsmanship, didn't play any of his upperclassmen in this contest. He played just his freshmen and sophomores. And Lewis County still came away with the victory 36-0. But I thought that was really cool. And that's, something we don't always highlight enough when good sportsmanship is happening. So
yeah, and it's probably just from a coaching standpoint. I mean, I'm sure that some of those upperclassmen, the Ty Hambleys and the Gage Crows and whatnot, they were probably looking forward to picking up a few touchdowns and getting some big moments and some highlight moments. But like we just talked about, who's to say that an inadvertent helmet on the kneecap doesn't end somebody's season? So Coach Madrell had the kids that could go in there and could compete and could offer Meadows Valley a good, stiff competition. Obviously, they won the game, and he did so without risking any of his upperclassmen because they've got some big games coming up. This is one of the better 1A Division II teams in the league. And again, to go back to that Kendrick thing, it's not like Ty Kep played 3 quarters. He played one. And then he was out of the game. So similar. They're very much their analogies at play there. And then there's even another game where, and staying in the Division II ranks for a moment, North Gem beat Clark County 80-8. And Corey Hatch said afterwards, the head coach at North Gem, I'm not proud to have won the game by 72 points, but I'm proud of the way that the kids on both sides handled it. The kids played, and the kids just played football. And he even specifically singled out a handful of the Clark County kids and said, look out here in a couple of years, they might not be too bad. So I think that, and it happens a lot. We've seen instances. Stetson Spooner up in Mullen has told me there were a couple times where they were having to play where they were really limited on kids. And going back to the game that started this whole thing, Meadows Valley is limited on kids. They don't have a ton of just physical bodies. And Stetson Spooner said that there were games, and Kendrick is one with Zane Hobart, where a kid got hurt where Mullen could only have 7 kids on the field. So what did Hobart do? He pulled one of his kids off and they played 7-on-7. Doesn't have to do that. It's not written in the rules that he has to do that or opposing coaches have to do that. But yet you see it. You see it a pretty fair amount because I think there are enough teams out there that can say, hey, been there. I know what that's like. So let me get a kid or two off the field and let's just play football.
Yeah, it's hard in the 8-man game because sometimes there are those programs that have such low numbers, and it's great to see great sportsmanship being demonstrated on all fronts because coaches remember this stuff too, right? It's like the 8-man family. It's like it's a close-knit group, and they're coaches remember these things, and so I'm really glad to see all of the great sportsmanship that is taking place. Let's just keep.
Can't really quick just to put a bow on this. You can't judge sportsmanship solely on a scoreboard, and that's a thing that I think gets lost here. Well, it was 104-0. Well, what do you want them to do? Do you want them to take a knee on every play? And tell me, from a coach and a competitor standpoint, which do you prefer? Do you prefer that the other team keeps playing or that the other team patronizes you by literally taking a knee every play in the fourth quarter or punting on first down or whatever the case may be? And I'm a baseball coach, and I've been on the wrong end of some of these games coaching baseball where the other team's been apologizing to me, hey, coach, it's 15-0, 16-0. And I just tell them, just play the game. Just play the game. It's our job to ultimately get better. And we'll be better as a result of this. The kids are getting the playing time. The kids are getting the experience. And hopefully they're getting that taste in their mouth. Hey, we don't want to go through this again. So we have the opportunity to have it in our hands and make this, a teaching moment for the coaches, an opportunity to grow as kids, and an opportunity to improve as a program.
Definitely. So let's just keep it at the 1A D2 level. We've kind of already started down this path where we've talked a lot about 1A D2 teams. And I promise we'll get to Raft River or Oakley, which was the other big story coming up. Other things that stood out to me, obviously Camas County hosting Horseshoe Bend in that quasi makeup game. Basically, we talked about it last week. Rimrock had canceled the game on Camas. They were able to pick up Horseshoe Bend, and the Mushers. I think they were pretty motivated to come out and, okay, this is a top 5 matchup. We want to show everybody that we are for real, and they win 54-6 over Horseshoe Bend.
Well, and the thing that we're starting to learn a lot about this Camas County team, it's not a one-trick pony. Tristan Smith, Troy Smith, Emmett Palin. I mean, you go up and down the list. Trevor Tews, I might be mispronouncing his name, and I apologize if I am. You just go up and down the list. In any given game, it's not like they have one kid, Cody Smith, another one. It's not like they have one kid at the end of the day who has 250 yards rushing and 6 touchdowns, right? It's a series of kids who are all between 50 and 100 yards, either rushing and receiving. 5 kids have scored 1, maybe 2 touchdowns. The balance is impressive. It's really impressive. And as you go on, some teams you can look at and you can say, okay, we got to lock this guy down and we got a chance to win. Camas County, okay, so you take Troy Smith away. Okay, what about Cody Smith? What about Emmett? What about Trevor? You keep going down. They've got multiple kids who can hurt you. And the thing that I was told from the beginning that is proven prophetic, they're very quick. They're not super bulky. They're not loaded up with 225-pound guys, but they're very quick. And when you have smaller numbers in the same size space, if you can create those matchups and you can get those quick players with a little bit of room to operate, you can really cause problems for opposing defenses. And that Horseshoe Bend team, 54-6, nothing notwithstanding, or 54-6 notwithstanding, I should say, that Horseshoe Bend team is a pretty good football team. I think they're still going to be in the playoffs when it's all said and done. And I think they saw firsthand, okay, this Camas County team, they've got some bullets in the gun, metaphorically speaking, that are going to be tough to deal with.
Yeah, this is a good learning test for Horseshoe Bend as well. Okay, we got to get a lot better if we, want to see these guys again down the road in the playoffs. Emmett Palin was your top award winner this week in the 3 Stars Awards. He had a very fantastic game, of course. And I always look at the defensive stats for Camas County. It seems like they're forcing multiple turnovers per game. They're usually taking a defensive touchdown back. Palin had 8 tackles, a sack, and a pick 6. They do this every week. So yes, the offense is incredible, but to me, the Mushers defense is kind of, I think, very quietly one of the better units in the state.
Yeah, and Cody Smith, he's returned a couple of picks for touchdowns, and you just go up and down that list. Like you said, it's, there are 4 or 5 different guys on any given day that are doing damage for the Mushers. And they're that team that, and I'll continue to eat crow on this because I'm looking worse and worse by the week. I said early in the season that I thought Dietrich and Castleford were maybe a half step ahead of Camas County in that conference in the Sawtooth, and so far Camas County, I don't know if they listen to me. I don't know if it's like written up on the wall or somewhere, bulletin board material, but what they're showing me is they're right there with anybody. They're right there, and you can't say they're a half step behind anybody right now. They're a good football team.
Definitely. Camas County was picked to tie the preseason coaches poll that we conducted for IdahoSports.com. Castleford and Camas tied for first in that preseason coaches poll, and Dietrich was third, which again is why I was low on Dietrich to start the year. And clearly, you can have 3 teams from one league, and they could all be the top 3 teams in the state. We've seen that happen before, especially from District 4. So the last team from District 4 that I wanted to highlight was Hagerman. They go out on Thursday night and defeat Idaho City 54-18. Here are the Pirates 3-1. They actually are in the media poll this week for the 1A D2 poll. They tied for 5th with Council. So congratulations to Hagerman. They're off to a 3-1 start. We'll find out coming up how legit they are because they get into conference play now. But what a cool story this has been.
It is, and they've done a great job. And I think I told you the former coach, Dana Strong, telling me last year, hey, I don't know that we're that far away. And starting 3-1 is they've shown that they've taken that next step forward. And now, like you said, when you get into the Castlefords, who's given up 14 points all season, and then you get into Dietrich, who's averaging 65 points per game on offense. When you get into those games, those are the tests, and it's going to be really fun to see how Hagerman handles them. If when they get punched, are they going to get right back up? I suspect that they will, but it's going to be a little bit of a different beast, that's for sure.
Yeah, so we'll see how Hagerman stacks up here as the season goes along. District 4 this year only gets 3 playoff bids. Last year they got 4. This year they only get 3, so that's going to be a fantastic battle between those 4 squads as they all try. So that
tells you if Hagerman wants a playoff spot, and I'm sure they do. If you go back, there is a pretty good history of winning championships at Hagerman. I think they won one as recently as about 6 or 7 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. It's not that long ago that Hagerman won a state championship, but they're going to have to win at least one of those games. They're going to have to beat Camas County. They're going to have to beat Castleford. They're going to have to beat Dietrich if they want to be sure of getting into the postseason.
Definitely. Yeah, Hagerman has won titles in 1989, 1990, 2011, and 2013. So, really wasn't that long ago. Yep, pretty good. A lot of schools out there still looking for that first championship. And Hagerman's sitting at 4. Castleford did win as well. Dietrich had the week off. Castleford did get a nice victory as well over Rockland. 26-14. Ethan Rowland started the scoring with a touchdown run. And again, we don't know much about Castleford. There's some schools that are very active on social media, highlighting the team and what they did, or, calling in media reports and things like that. And there's certain schools where it's really tough to get information. But from what I've seen from Castleford this year, I've had the chance to go back and watch a little bit of their film. They've got some pretty good offensive linemen up front that are kind of leading the way for their success.
Yeah, and a couple pretty good athletes behind them. And if you can blow open some holes, it's fun to get the 80-yard touchdown, but you know what? You average 5 yards a carry, you're going to get to the end zone eventually anyway. and they've done a good job of that. And then even more impressively, like I said, is that defense. 14 points allowed total in 3 games. That's pretty doggone good. And I don't care if it's 8-man. I don't care if it's 6-man. I don't care if it's 11-man. I don't care if it's 9-man. I know that there's some 9-man leagues out there. At some point, if you want to win a championship, you're going to have to make stops. And that's what is going to, you can, the 80 to 78 football game sure can be fun from a television highlight thing and a player's highlight reel standpoint. But those teams that rely on scoring 60 to 70 points, sooner or later, if they want to win a championship, they're going to have to stop some people. And you get into November when it's cold and it's wet and the conditions are not great. Your margin for error generally comes back to your defense. And that Castleford team, they've been stymieing. They've been straight up stymieing people so far this year. And that plays no matter the weather conditions.
Yep. So they'll be a fun team to keep an eye on for sure as they progress in their season. Okay, let's go to 1A D1 football, where Raft River Oakley was the game of the week, I thought, in the state, not just for 8-man football, but in the entire state. And they didn't disappoint. The regular season battles always seem to be these tight affairs. And then when we get to the championship, then Oakley's like, okay, yep, we're going to just blow past you. It always astounds me that Oakley improves so much as the season goes on. So Oakley wins 34-30. This was a back and forth affair, kind of like last year's game. Raft River jumped out to an early lead. They were up 18-6 at one point. Oakley never panicked. They stayed calm, stayed the course, and it was Oakley that was up 2 scores by the time the fourth quarter rolled around, and it was Raft River trying to make a mad comeback. They got a late touchdown, tried to get an onside kick, didn't recover it. So for Oakley, I thought this was a very impressive win, and honestly, for Raft River, I thought this was pretty impressive as well, because I thought the gap between Oakley and Raft River was a lot wider than this game proved it to be.
Yeah, Raft definitely hung with them. I think the thing that is going to be interesting with both those teams going forward, because I expect that those are going to be 2 teams that are, they very much have the potential to be playing deep into November. It's if either team gets into a situation where they have to score quickly, how will they respond to that? You talked about Raft River getting the touchdown, needing the onside kick, and then needing another touchdown. If Raft River, if Oakley gets the ball on the 10, on their own 10 with a minute and a half to go, do they have the pace? Do they have the tempo? They certainly have the players. I don't think there's anybody questioning. There are playmakers on both sides. Are they going to be able to quickly and efficiently move down the field and score when the clock is not their ally? I think that's a thing that is going to be interesting to watch with both those teams. Because I think there are close games in both of their futures going forward, especially when we're talking in the playoffs. But they're both good football teams. They're both strong football teams, great players on both sides, and they know how to put on a show. They play some pretty fun football games.
Yeah, Ethan Torabau had a 65-yard touchdown run for Oakley at one point. He was the IdahoSports.com player of the game. And outside of that, almost all the touchdowns on both sides were from like the 20-yard line in. There wasn't that big home run hitter type plays that we're used to seeing. And so I think that speaks to both defenses as well, that they can prevent the big play.
34-30 in the 8-man context is probably akin to, say, a 18-14 11-man game where, okay, there's a little bit of offense, but the defense is mixed in some stops as well. And if in general, when you're talking about the level of teams that Raft River and Oakley are, you got to expect if you're holding a team to mid-20s to maybe 30 points, you got to feel pretty good about your chances to win. Now, if you're Castleford and you're holding teams to 0, you feel fantastic about your chances to win. But if you're keeping a team anywhere from, say, 24 to 30 points, you've got to feel pretty confident that you're going to scratch together enough scoring drives and enough scoring plays to win that game.
Definitely. The league standings right now, Oakley alone in first. They're 2-0 in the league. Carrie and Glens Ferry are both 1-0. Murtaugh and Raft River are both 1-1. And then Valley and Lighthouse Christian bring up the rear at 0-2. And we talked about Lighthouse being better than an 0-2 league record. They played Carrie on Friday night and lost 36-6. It was actually a very tight game at halftime. And then in the third quarter, Colton Larna ripped off like an 87-yard touchdown and gave Carrie the breathing room they needed. But that game was very close for a half. Larna ends up rushing for 3 touchdowns for the Panthers in the win. They played this game without Connor Simpson, their all-state running back.
Yep. No, and Jason Smith, the head coach for Lighthouse Christian, said, "Hey, just straight up, we just didn't play that well." And that happens sometimes. Sometimes you just don't have a great game, and you can't afford to not play well against Carrie. Carrie is a pretty good football team, and they have multiple weapons, and they go out and put up 36 points against Lighthouse Christian without Connor Simpson. That's pretty solid effort.
Yep. So Carrie just keeps on doing what Carrie does, and again, those league standings are going to change a lot here over the next couple of weeks. It'll be really interesting to see how that all shakes out. Up north in the White Pine League, we had so obviously Oakley Raft River was a really great game, and we had that on IdahoSports.com. The other 8-man game we had last week was also a thriller as Clearwater Valley hosted Lapwai, and this was a wild back and forth affair. Clearwater Valley outscores Lapwai 16-0 over the final 10 minutes and change to earn the come from behind win 34-22. I thought it was very impressive for Coach Alan Hutchins and his Rams squad to battle back in the fourth quarter and win a game late.
Yeah, especially coming off what had happened the week before, where they just did not have a strong game at all against Notice, to bounce back in a big game. I believe it was homecoming and all the festivities that go with that. For them to bounce back and come up with a win against a good Lapwai team like that, it puts them into a good position going forward. 2-0 in league play, and you've got that win over Lapwai, for example. Now they come up and they play Kamiah, and those two are old friends, shall we say. There's a bit of a rivalry there. The team that wins that game puts themselves in a real good position going forward to earn, if not the automatic bid from the White Pine to the 1A Division I playoffs. It puts them in really good position as far as securing one of those 8 at-large bids from the state to go to the postseason. And so this, to get that win against Lapwai, that's a good first step. And now I know both those teams are looking at this game and thinking, okay, here's another big step. Here's another big step. The winner of this game is going to put themselves in a really, really, really good spot. They're not in. Let's not break out the tired cliche of punching the ticket. It will not have happened yet, but they will put themselves very much in the driver's seat, to steal another cliche, to go get a playoff spot.
Yeah, it's almost a reversal of last year. If we look at the White Pine standings, Prairie, Kamiah, Clearwater Valley, all 2-0 at the top of the standings. Then you've got Potlatch and Troy, they're both 1-1, and then Lapwai, Genesee, and Logos all 0-2. I don't think a lot of people expected Lapwai and Genesee to both be 0-2 in league, but that speaks to the quality of play in the White Pine League. And last year, where we talked about Clearwater Valley, had that gauntlet of a schedule early on, right? They played Raft River, Prairie, and Genesee. Boom, 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 all out of the gate. And they were 0-3, and they started the year last year 1-5, and they just never could get that momentum going. Now they did qualify for the playoffs, got bounced in the first round by Lapwai, their league rival. What a difference a year makes, and they talk about this in the NFL all the time, right? If you start 2-0, you have like an 85% chance of making the playoffs, and if you start 0-2, it's kind of the opposite way. Yeah. The schedule, you don't really have much control over that, but it does make a difference if you can get off to a good start. That momentum typically carries you through.
It does, but the good news, if you're Lapwai or you're Logos, is you've got the opportunity to make up some ground. You're going to see Potlatch, you're going to see Troy, you're going to see some of these teams that you're trying to catch, and if you can take care of business, now the onus, it's much more important. Your margin for error just went from this big to this big. You can't afford to come up short of the goal line too many more times. But if you're able to take care of business in some of those games, you can push yourself right back into the playoff picture, especially when it's the KFC 11 special herbs and spices, when that's the the math equation here where no one really knows what it is. But you know that if you take care of some business and you win some games in conference, you've got a chance to be right there. You're going to make somebody make a choice here. And by somebody, I mean a computer. It's, you're going to give yourself a chance. And I know it sounds like I'm stating the obvious by saying if you win, you have a better chance. Well, duh. But not only that, but if you can knock a couple of those teams in front of you down a peg, it's kind of the combination effect. So, I don't think, if you're a Lapwai Wildcat player or coach or fan, I don't think you should be putting away your helmet and heading over to the gym to start working on, the latest incarnation of a phenomenal basketball team that they're going to have this year. But at the same time, okay, we've got to win some games. We've got to, they've been in a lot of games. We've got to find a way to close these out and turn the losses into wins. And they have the athletes to do it. They just need to make, that one more play, that two more plays, and the better results will come.
Definitely. So let's start to preview what's coming up this weekend for games. Right away on Thursday night, Logos at Lapwai. Somebody is going to get their first win of the year in league play, and that could really catapult the team. Logos got their first win of the season period last week over Clark Fork, 32-30 in a tight battle. So Logos is at Lapwai. Prairie is at Genesee in the White Pine League, and then the game you highlighted, Clearwater Valley at Kamiah, will be a fantastic matchup, and also Troy at Potlatch. Those are two teams that are both 1-1 in league play right now. That'll be a separator type game as well.
Yeah, and that's a really important matchup because, in talking to several coaches, they think Potlatch is probably the real deal. And as it goes on, they're going to be a real thorn in everybody's side. Whereas, I think Troy has to prove it a little bit. I think that some people have seen Troy win a game or two in the past, and then at the end of the year, there they are at 2-6 or at 3-5, and so they have a chance to come in here, and they have to go to Potlatch to do it. But they have a chance to make a little bit of a statement here, like, hey, don't forget about us. You're talking about these 3 or 4 teams over here. Don't forget about us. It's in their hands, and you'll hear me say that a lot. It's not up to anybody else. It's up to those Trojan players. If they want to go out and if they want to be taken seriously, it starts on Friday night with a chance to beat a good Potlatch team.
Definitely. In District 4 this week, we've got 2 games for you on IdahoSports.com. Oakley at Carrie is going to be really tantalizing. Paul Kingsbury will be on the call for that one. And then we also have a non-conference battle as Lighthouse Christian will host Butte County. The gauntlet continues for the Lions, but we'll have Lighthouse for the first time this year on IdahoSports.com. We're very excited to broadcast that game on Friday night as well. That should be an interesting one.
Yeah, they like to throw the ball. They're happy to play some tempo. They're happy to take advantage of their speed and their size on the outside. And Butte County is 180 degrees the other way. Sam Thorngren wants to use his bevy of running backs, and he wants to basically bludgeon you into submission. So again, it comes back to the defense. Which defense is the Lighthouse Christian front? Are they going to make it harder for Butte County to run? Then Butte County's secondary is going to make it for Lighthouse Christian to pass. I think that, we like to simplify things down in this game. We like to try and make them sound way easier and way less complicated than they generally are. But I think this is a matchup in particular where if Butte County can make Justice Schrader's life miserable throwing the ball for Lighthouse Christian is going to have a tough time winning that game. Conversely, if the Lighthouse Christian front is not letting Trayton Allen and the other running backs from Butte County, Corey Gammett, some of those other players for Butte County, if they're not giving them any room to operate, they have a chance to make things pretty tough on the Pirates.
Yeah, it's going to be a fantastic non-conference battle. The other game we're bringing you, Oakley at Carrie, of course, will be fantastic as well, as we'll see. Carrie, another hurdle to clear here in their first year competing at the 1A D1 level. Other games.
What's the deal with Paul and Carrie? Did he move? Yeah. And I just haven't heard that he's like the official play-by-play guy of Carrie High School.
They take care of him real good at Carrie. He's well fed when he goes to the game. The Panthers, their parents, they're always cooking like delicious food. It sounds like they're always, smoking something or, some sort of delicious meat. I think during one of the games, actually on the air, Paul was calling a Carrie game a couple weeks ago, and somebody came up to him and asked, and he's like, 3rd down and 6, and yes, I will take a Mountain Dew, thank you. And
nice.
He's placing his order on the air. So Carrie treats him very well, and it's a hard place to get to, right? It's going to be a long trip for whoever is going up there to broadcast. So as Paul, as the boss, I guess, takes that long road trip. So yes, Paul will be at Carrie once again Friday night to broadcast Oakley and the Panthers. Also in District 4 this week, Valley is at Raft River. And this is a big one. Glens Ferry at Murtaugh. Glens Ferry is sitting there 1-0 in the league. They didn't play last week. And Murtaugh is a team that's 3-1 and trying to prove that, hey, we belong in the postseason conversation.
Yeah, I like that Murtaugh team quite a bit. And Glens Ferry, I think, needs much the same as Troy up in the White Pine. Glens Ferry, they need a win. They need to show the rest of the Snake River Conference that, hey, don't forget about us. And Murtaugh presents the next good opportunity. You hear teams all the time. One of the latest cliches is we need to go 1-0 this week. Well, Glens Ferry probably needs to go 1-0. Because we're creating a little bit of separation with those top few teams. And if Glens Ferry wants to stay in playoff contention, a big part of it is getting a win over one of those top teams to close that gap down a little bit.
Definitely. Over in District 3, Notice continues marching on. They beat Salmon River last week. Notice will be at Wilder. This was the game we had kind of circled in the preseason as, okay, this game, more than likely decides the league title. Maybe the wind has been taken out of the sails of this game a little bit because of Wilder's injury problems. So to me, the more intriguing game in District 3 is Rimrock at Greenleaf Friends. The Grizzlies just beat Shoshone on Saturday night, 27-26. I have no idea what happened in the game, but sounds like it was a really exciting one. The Grizzlies got a 1-point win. They're 2-2. And Rimrock is coming off of a quote-unquote bye week after they had to drop out of their Camas County matchup. So to me, that is the more intriguing matchup out of District 3.
It's a compelling game. And we talked about a couple of weeks ago when Greenleaf picked up that win over Meadows Valley. It was their first full-fledged varsity win on the field in like 10 years because there were some years that they didn't play. There were some years that they played a JV schedule. So a little bit misleading. It wasn't like they'd gone 0-8 10 years in a row or anything like that. But, they finally pick up that full-fledged varsity win in that game, and they apparently liked it so much that they came out and did it again. And I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be thinking when this game's over, hey, we have a really good chance to be 3-2 overall and have a conference win. And you got to go into that game with that mindset. And I'm interested to see how they do. And I'm hoping, I don't know if it'll work out, but I'm hoping I have a chance to maybe sneak over and watch a little bit of that game because I don't live too far from Greenleaf.
Yeah, that'll be a Thursday night game, as we learned. They play either on Thursday or Saturday because they are co-oping with Gem State Adventist Academy this year for football as well, and they don't play, compete in activities on Fridays. So that'll be a Thursday night game. And then over in District 5 and 6, it's a lot of D1 versus D2 matchups this week. We talked about Butte County, obviously going to Lighthouse. Grace will play Rockland, and Chalice Mackey, 7C, will play Water Springs. That'll be an interesting matchup as well. So let's go to the D2 schedule and see what's on tap. We just talked about Districts 5 and 6. So let's go over to District 4, where Hagerman will play at Castleford. We'll find out right away, where the Pirates really do stack up.
Yeah, that's one of two games this week where it's like, okay, you're messing with the Bulls. Are you going to get the horn, or are you going to be able to, hang around? And the other one, would be that Lewis County Kendrick game where, hey, can Lewis County, can they counterpunch? Because Kendrick's going to punch, right? Castleford's going to punch. Can Hagerman counterpunch, or is that a game when we look up at the end of the night, does it wind up as a one-sided score? It's a great opportunity for the two teams that are that are looking up, so to speak, for Hagerman and for Lewis County. It's a great opportunity, and as a competitor, that's what you should want. You should want that opportunity, and it's a great opportunity for the other sides as well, for Castleford and for Kendrick, because the one thing that you want to be tested. You want to be pushed. You want to be challenged. You don't want it to come too easy, because then when you do get challenged, maybe you don't respond to that challenge too well. So both of those games are great opportunities for both sides. I would expect Kendrick to get a W. I would expect Castleford to get a W. But as the old saying goes, that's why you roll the ball out there and say play. That's why you kick it off. That's why you play. And let's see if Lewis County and Hagerman, let's see if they're really ready to make that jump up. And I think there's some talent there to do it. Let's see if they can.
Yeah, those will be two fantastic matchups. Other games in District 4, Dietrich is at Hanson this week, coming off the bye, and Camas County will be at Shoshone. Let's just go up to the White Pine League, since you talked about Kendrick and
Don't
Lewis
forget
County.
Horseshoe Bend Council.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that's the best game of the week.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So let's keep it linear. We'll go District 3. This is, to me, the best game of the week in 1A D2 football. Horseshoe Bend at Council. I think we've had differing opinions, right? I think, Will, you've leaned Council a little more. I've leaned more Horseshoe Bend, and I guess somebody between the two of us will be bragging next week, and somebody will be eating that plate of crow.
Correct. It's gonna be a good matchup, and they've neither one of them have been unscathed. You've got 3-1 versus 2-2, so they've both been on differing sides of the wins and losses, and they both have playmakers, and they're both strong. They're both competitive. Last year's game came down to I want to say the final 30 seconds, if I'm not mistaken, and I would expect this year's game to be no different. And I've been saying all year long, when it comes to the long pin, don't sleep on Tri-Valley. I'm going to say that, but now I'm going to pick up the torch for Garden Valley. They're 3-0. And they play Meadows Valley on Friday afternoon in Garden Valley. They're 3-0, and the skeptic will say, "Well, who have they played?" Well, the thing is they've bludgeoned all three teams that they've played. And if you're a good team, isn't that what you're supposed to do? So let's not penalize them for doing what they're supposed to do. They're going to be a team that bears watching as well as they're, and they've got. I wrote down some stuff here about them specifically. We talk about multiple kids who can hurt you. You have Tacoma Kelly, you have Gavin Kelly, you have Aaron Noakes, you have Jaden Hunt, who's making plays on defense. There might be more to that Garden Valley team than we first anticipated, where we're talking Horseshoe Bend Council. Maybe we should be talking Horseshoe Bend Council and Garden Valley.
Yeah, and you can only play the team that's in front of you that week. For Garden Valley, they'll try and take another step forward. Salmon River also plays at Tri-Valley. I know that's another team that you think could compete for that third playoff spot. District 3 gets 3 playoff bids this year, so we think Council and Horseshoe Bend are locked in, and probably Garden Valley, Tri-Valley are going to be fighting for that third spot. Potentially. So we'll keep an eye on that. District 2, Kendrick plays. I like this league schedule because there's only 4 teams, so it's really easy to tell who's playing who if you know one of the matchups. Kendrick, right? Kendrick is going to play Lewis County. Deary will play Timberline. 2 teams to the playoffs out of that league. And again, I think it probably comes down to Timberline and Lewis County, much as it did last year when the Spartans from Weehype earned that second playoff bid. And then up north in the North Star League, Mullen St. Regis continues to do their thing. They beat a shorthanded Wallace team last week. Wallace is missing its big playmaker Landon Streeter. Hopefully he's back soon as Mullen St. Regis won that game 46-6. They will play Lakeside this week. They'll host Lakeside in Mullen at 3:30 on Friday. You've also got Clark Fork at Kootenai this week on the league schedule also.
Yeah, and that Clark Fork team they're no joke either. They went and hung right with Logos last week, and Nick Holloway, the head coach for Logos, said, "Hey, he said that's a team that can go win that division." And when you've got Mullen St. Regis in there, who from a league title standpoint, they've kind of owned the North Star since the North Star was reformed a few years ago. they're going to have to go through Clark Fork to get there. And Clark Fork, I'm sure, remembers a few of those games. And the two teams have already played once, and it was a good football game. And I'm sure Clark Fork is anxious to, give the Tigers one back because it's been pretty one-sided the last few years. And Ethan Howard, Chase San Roman, they've got some kids that can play up in Clark Fork. And let's see how that one plays out when those two teams meet again down the line. And remember, they get two teams in the playoffs this year. So Clark Fork they really have something to play for, where in years past, by this point of the year, when they've only had one bid, whoever's looking up at Mullen St. Regis may as well just kind of shrug their shoulders and say, well, we're going to go 7-1, but Mullen St. Regis is 8-0, so we're not going to the playoffs. And that changes this year. That's going to make things a little different.
Yeah, that'll be a fun rematch, and that'll be a little further on down the schedule. There's a lot of good games on tap this weekend, though, including 2 on IdahoSports.com. Again, Oakley at Carrie, Butte County at Lighthouse Christian. We try to bring you a couple each week that are going to be good matchups. And once again, a couple of great matchups on tap. Will, as always, thanks for breaking down the 8-man game for us. You do the 3 Stars awards every week on the Idaho 8-man Twitter account and then on our website as well. And you are, because information is limited, right? Somebody who lives in Rockland doesn't always know about what's going on up in Clark Fork. And you are, and I hope the goal was for this show to kind of be the conduit to bring all the 8-man fans together to learn about what's going on around the entire state. And
hopefully. And then, guys like you have to vote on media polls, and you may not know as much about some of these teams. So if I can help create a platform where there's just more awareness about 8-man athletes, 8-man teams, 8-man communities, then what I'm doing is working. It's serving a purpose if I can just kind of provide that platter for people to utilize.
Definitely. Well, we'll be back to take another turn at the platter next week. Enjoy the competitions this weekend, everybody, and thanks for tuning into the Idaho 8-man Prepcast. For Will Hoenike, I'm Brandon Baney, and we'll see you next time on IdahoSports.com.